Hearing none, we will invite those who would like to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, and can we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I will note for the record that we already did call the roll at the beginning of the work session. At this time, we will move to public participation, and I have a couple of proclamations that I would like to read. And make sure I've got the right one. First, whereas change and growth is constant and affects all countries, states, regions, cities, and towns, including Oxford, and whereas World Town Planning Day is celebrated in 30 countries on 4 continents every November 8th, and whereas the community planning process provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices for a safe, healthy, and equitable future Oxford. And whereas the full benefits of planning requires public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in plan creation and implementation. And whereas Oxford will celebrate in November by presenting the Oxford Tomorrow Comprehensive Plan with an open house to be held at 6 p.m. November 16th, 2022 at the Talawanda Middle School. That's just a little plug for everybody. And whereas we encourage citizens to take part by providing input and engaging in the process leading up to a formal adoption of the plan by City Council, now therefore I, William B. Snavely, Mayor of the City of Oxford, Ohio, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, November 8th, 2022 as World Town Planning Day in the City of Oxford, and urge all citizens to support this most worthwhile effort to raise awareness about the importance of community planning. And I would like to present this to the chair of the Planning Commission, if he would come forward. Would you like to? Sure.
Looks a lot nicer in person than in the agenda. Mr. Mayor, Council, on behalf of the Planning Commission and the other entities in town, specifically boards and commissions that work with zoning, planning, ordinance, this is actually pretty exciting. There's a lot of work that goes on in the background. I know the council knows this, but World Town Planning Day ironically falls on a regularly scheduled Planning Commission day. So the irony is a little fun for us because behind the scenes there's a group, Mr. Perry and others are leading for a new comprehensive plan because the one we have on the books is well over a decade old. So a couple of things that we do on planning. A lot of people think we approve every pizza shop or how many restaurants come in. We don't. We set the foundation, we set the tone and the direction. And some of the things we really focus on are collaboration, fairness, creativity with consistency. We like to celebrate the history, but harness innovation with an eye to the future. So just an example, Mayor Snavely had shared about the open session where folks can come and learn about the plan, but also contribute their thoughts. I would also invite citizens to come to meetings like this, but also the Planning Commission, because on November 8th, we don't have any business items, but we still chose to meet because the Parking and Transportation Committee, as well as the Planning Commission, are listening to a presentation from the Butler County Regional Transit Authority, which is going to give us a synopsis or a quick rundown of the multimodal station that is going to be built on Chestnut Street. So a lot of people don't really know the details, but within the next couple of years, there will be an Amtrak station and a $26 million bus facility. So those are the kind of things that we do. we're proud of what we do, and we really want people's input. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Corey. We appreciate it. And we appreciate all the work that our boards and commissions, made up of citizens of Oxford, do for the city, and this is a good example of that. Next, I have a proclamation. Whereas Empty Bowls is an international grassroots hunger relief effort now held in 20 countries and has raised millions of dollars worldwide toward hunger relief. And whereas 2022 marks the 20th anniversary of Empty Bowls in Oxford, Ohio. And whereas since 2002, Oxford Empty Bowls has raised and donated more than $126,000 to the Family Resource Center, the Oxford Community Choice Pantry, the Talawanda Pantry and Social Services, or TOPS, and Miami Cares Food Pantry, the St. Mary Backpack Program, the Open Hands Food Pantry, and the Talawanda School District's Little Free Pantry in support of their efforts to fight hunger and food insecurity. And whereas too many of our Oxford area friends and neighbors are in need, with 1/3 of the children in the Talawanda School District receiving free or reduced price meals, and TOPS serving 439 households, or 1,240 individuals in 2020. And whereas donated items alone cannot fill all of our beneficiaries' needs, and Oxford Empty Bowls provides unrestricted funds that help their dedicated staffs, boards, and volunteers fill in the gaps and cover operating expenses. And whereas Oxford's 20th annual Empty Bowls benefit soup luncheon will be held Saturday, November 12th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Oxford Community Arts Center, and all luncheon guests will keep their bowls as reminders that there are always empty bowls in the world. Now, therefore, I, William B. Snavely, Mayor of the City of Oxford, do hereby proclaim November 12th, 2022, Oxford Empty Bowls Day. And I believe Connie is going to accept this.
We have to.
Oh, good. Here, you can help her. This is Connie Malone, by the way. Should have introduced you.
That's okay. Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Snavely. Thank you, council. Thank you, staff, for making this. Thank you, Heather, for getting this all put together. And it is my real privilege to be with you this evening to thank you for your support of Oxford Empty Bowls since 2002, to invite you to join us. I think I've seen many of you there across many, many years. Your cupboards are overflowing with bowls, I know. You can always use a few more. But we do invite you to join us on the 12th. On behalf of Ann Wengler, one of our co-organizers, Alice Lotch, who could not be here tonight, Rob Abowitz, who also could not be here tonight, and Courtney Spalding, who we're bringing in some young blood because we're getting older and we need it. And of course, our beneficiaries. Your support does mean so much because the need, as you all probably know even better than we do, the need is very great. And we don't know what this, but I should thank Heidi Schiller and the Oxford Community Arts Center, who for years now has hosted us free of charge for this event. So we are grateful for their support and sponsorship as well. So thank you for making it Oxford Empty Bowls Day on November 12th.
Super. Thank you, Connie.
And thanks for considering picking up more litter.
Nobody picks up more litter than Connie Malone. All right, next we will move to Heidi Schiller, who is going to make a presentation on the Oxford Community Arts Center. Welcome, Heidi.
I'm a little shorter than most. So As you said, my name is Heidi Schiller. I'm the Executive Director for the Oxford Community Arts Center. I did script what I'm going to say so that I can move along quite briskly. So thank you for your time, Mayor Snavely and council members, for this opportunity to update the city on the achievements and progress made by the OCAC during our recently completed fiscal year. Tonight's presentation not only meets this year's sustainability objective of our 2023-2027 strategic plan, but also gives us a chance to brag just a little bit of our continued partnership with the City of Oxford. Having just celebrated our 20th anniversary, a testament not only to community-minded arts visionaries, but also to Miami University and the City of Oxford, the Oxford Community Arts Center proudly stands as a cultural asset in Oxford and works tirelessly to maintain the beautiful 173-year-old Oxford Female Institute. It will come as no surprise that our main core of our mission is to promote the arts. But two other mission objectives weigh just as strongly: the ongoing preservation of history in Oxford and the ability to serve future generations as a connector for inspiration and imagination. These three key points help us build a community for the future that will attract visitors, retain residents, and be a vital part of Oxford tomorrow. Our approach to reaching and achieving our mission goals are threefold: a dedication to the arts through exhibition in all its forms, a desire to present the arts through events that elevate and enlighten, and the ability to create community engagement opportunities that encompass our entire greater Oxford area. Now, someone made the offhand comment to me last year, and I've taken this as my personal motto for the OCAC, that the path to innovation leads through inspiration. And the OCAC stands as both literally and figuratively an inspiration location. We're not just an art center. We're not a community center. We are a community arts center. And the founding Board of Trustees chose those words deliberately to embody and focus the services provided by the OCAC. We are home to the Art Shop, a collective of artists who sell their work at our gift shop. We are home to 30 resident artists, some of whom need nothing more than a creative space to explore themselves and their creativity, and for some who helps pay the bills. We are home to 3 dedicated gallery spaces, and over the last fiscal year, we curated over 25 exhibits with 84 artists, both regionally and locally, through solo, complementary duo, and group exhibitions encompassing over 900 pieces of art. That included pottery, watercolor, paintings, photography, sculpture, and more. Now, yes, 268 were bowls made by Rob Abowitz and Sandra Karapides. But that does mean there were still 638 pieces of art on the walls. And while the OCAC does take a small commission, we paid out over $5,300 to artists whose works were sold while they were on exhibit at the OCAC. Like many arts organizations coming out of the pandemic year, our participation numbers are lower than previous years, but we are seeing a marked revitalization. Last year, we served over 6,500 participants. We were able to offer 29 art classes for ages 18 and older. We had 5 summer camps, including circus, theater, and gardeneering. Our after-school art class returned with growing enrollment, and the art club, which is a free after-school art held at Talawanda Middle School, started with 15 students last year and is now over 25 students enjoying art completely free. We presented 20 live performances and 19 community engagement events. And I will say that the OCAC excels in our community engagement programming. Low to no cost activities, often offered in collaboration with other community organizations. We work with a full range of Oxford groups to reach a widest possible audience with the greatest array of initiatives than we could ever do on our own. including our own Second Friday of the Arts. We offer Free Movie Friday, and this year we had 3 summer movies in our pavilion that were co-sponsored by the City of Oxford. We estimate that one of those had over 200 families enjoying an evening movie. We have Howl at the Moon, which last week, we can conservatively say we had 350 children and families enjoying Halloween arts, crafts, and activities. And again, on October 13th, we participated in the Cincinnati Blink Parade. And I want to say that our parade float was only one of 7 accepted. There were 80 participants in the parade. We were not grouped with the community art centers. We were grouped with Regional Pride. And we were happy to show and shout out to Oxford. Now, we reach over 8,000 followers, 3,000 who received an opt-in newsletter, and over 5,000 through our other social media platforms. And that does not include our website views. In this way, we can share the work that we do with partners such as Enjoy Oxford's Shakespeare in the Park, the monthly First Friday Dance Night partnered with Oxford Contra Dance, our Holiday Fest and Craft Fair that partners with Oxford Parks and Recreation and the Talawanda Band Boosters, Chocolate Meltdown, which has evolved into a partnership with Miami University Art Museum to also include Oxford Parks and Recreation, Enjoy Oxford, the Chamber of Commerce. We are so fortunate to have a strong base of friends and fans of Oxford Community Arts Center who support our mission through their volunteer time, their community dollars, and their sponsorships. For this calendar year, we already have 86 volunteers who have donated over 1,800 hours of service to the arts. That's a tremendous statement of both community support and a commitment to the arts. Now, I know as stewards of the city, you are most interested in the OCAC's sustainability. And I can assure you that while we depend a great deal on both donations and grants, like the very generous support from the City of Oxford, we are fiscally sound. We exceeded our income budget with a final of over $235,000 in individual contributions and grants last year. We are a sustainability grantee from the Ohio Arts Council and a sustaining impact grantee from ArtsWave, the United Fund of Cincinnati. That number represents 50% of our income for last year, and that doesn't include almost $69,000 that was gained and earned through our annual gala, another 15% of our income. For our 22-23 budget, we are on track to reach our budget goal of $215,000 for our individual contributions and grants, and we've already taken in 34% of our goal in the first quarter. This slide is a snapshot of our budget to actual for 2021-22. Our budget for the year was $315,000, and our actual was over $465,000. This year's budget is at over $371,000, a modest 5% increase over last year's budget. Now, I will say, we did receive a substantial individual donation last year in 2021 that remains anonymous, and we can't always anticipate that we're going to get that kind of support. So the OCAC is tremendously grateful for the city's partnership, especially through the efforts of the wonderful and dedicated city staff and the community assistance that helps fund projects that make Oxford a better place to work and live. So thank you for your time and your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Heidi. I think it's I know I speak for all of council and the community when I thank you for the success of OCAC. I want to thank all the volunteers and contributors, all the artists who have made it what it is today. It truly is a community crown jewel, and you should be very proud of the work you do.
Thank you. We are thrilled to be part of Oxford. I would say thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have a presentation from Jessica Green on managed natural lawn.
So I apologize for not having slides tonight. I have more of like an update. So I kind of chuckled when I was preparing for this evening that we've addressed the top 3 council goals: housing and economic development during the work session, and now we're talking about climate. And so I do want to acknowledge briefly that I think maybe perhaps you sensed some staff hesitation with the naturalized lawn ordinance. And what I realized is we should do a better job of explaining to you when something like we established these goals that dealt with climate, and the naturalized lawn wasn't on the list of goals. And instead of maybe feeling frustration, we should have come forward and said, oh, so hey, we need to take something off of this list if we're going to do this. And so I hope we can do a better job of that going forward in the future. But I kind of just want to acknowledge that perhaps that sense of that you were feeling from us. And when I kind of boiled down to it, I realized that's what it was. Like, it was different than what was on the list of goals that were adopted, and we should have come to you with a recommendation of a pivot or a change on another goal. That being said, we now have a recommendation. So our recommendation is that we ask you to probably vote no on the ordinance, and instead we ask you to pass a resolution encouraging naturalized lawns and pollinator gardens. This resolution, we could bring a draft during the first meeting of December. We could probably have it ready by the second meeting in November if you wanted us to. And then that would be paired with a robust education campaign. That education campaign was already in the works. We were actively working on it last summer, and then it did get delayed. I won't lie. We didn't really understand. We had a climate graduate student who was amazing. She was with us 20 hours a week over the summer, and she was just knocking out stuff. And we're like, great, do the naturalized lawn communication program too. And then all of a sudden our hours went to 10, and it went and completely stopped. So our recommendation is that we will probably pay for some assistance to develop naturalized lawn plans, plans for pollinator gardens that we can then put out with instructions, and we hope to roll that out in February of 2023, just in time for the spring planting season. So that is our recommendation, and I'll stop there. I also spoke at the last meeting about cats and their impact on the climate, and that we would bring forward an education campaign. But when I went back to the office and kind of really thought about it, we could, but it would mean we need to not do something else. And so my recommendation on that is that we would look to find a partner to help us create an education campaign that we can jointly then put out. So those are my updates this evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Counselors, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, I see the ordinance is, I mean, it's on the agenda for tonight. So I'm assuming
It's
that.
still
if
on the
we're-
table.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you're recommending that we take it off the table to do something with it and talk about it.
You could wait until we bring forward the resolution on the same meeting.
We could also leave it on the table indefinitely.
Well, we have to at some point take it off.
Well,
Or no,
yeah,
was that
things
word?
can go there
You
tonight,
learned something.
but as
That's
the
right.
table can be a,
Actually, I'm going to turn to Ben.
So technically, I believe under Robert's rules, if you don't take it off the table this session, it will automatically die.
Yeah.
So that would be one option as well if you're
That would
comfortable with that
prevent us
result.
from having to vote no on something that most of us are in favor of.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
I mean, I guess I see the people in the room who worked so hard on this and are big proponents, probably it's been many, many years. So I have no idea. I move to take it off the table. I don't know if I need to do that now.
No.
I just want to make sure I don't miss any votes.
I do want to say that
Comes
we
up
did
later.
this recommendation with input from those who helped create the ordinance, and they did indicate to us that they are fine with the resolution and the vote of support of this program, and they love the pairing with the communication campaign. If we pass the ordinance and it changes the language, we literally have to kind of restart our language that we've been drafting on the communication campaign, because it's been drafted with our current code in mind, which is fine. It's just, I need to acknowledge that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this comes up later in the agenda. Now, we are at that wonderful point in the agenda where we listen to you. If there's anything that you would like to bring to council that is not on tonight's agenda, or in the, if it happens to be in the consent agenda, come on forward, and we ask you to state your name and address for the record, and then we give you 5 minutes.
Yossi
Welcome.
Greenberg. Hi. Yossi Greenberg, 111 East Spring Street. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been getting a lot of calls from our dear alumni, parents of students, locals. I am the local rabbi here, as many of you guys know me. And are we safe? And my answer was very, very clear. The Jewish community is very safe here in Oxford, and we thank the city of Oxford for that. I've had meetings over here with Chief Jones, and we've gone through thoroughly all the details, which are irrelevant to this meeting tonight. But I want to thank Chief Jones. I want to thank the Oxford Police Department for keeping us safe, for thoroughly going through the investigation and making sure that everything was tip-top. And when people call and they want to find out what's going on, I refer them to the police or to anyone else who is involved. But really, my message is clear. I want to thank my colleague who came all the way from Chabad at the University of Cincinnati, who also has to deal with all kinds of students late at night, let's fill in the blanks, doing all kinds of things to our centers. And we had an episode, and the police know about it. And it's not really what it's all about tonight. I just wanted to say thank you. And I really appreciate everything. The community feels safe. The students are extremely, extremely happy to be here in Oxford. I'm proud of Miami University. And really that speaks volumes to all of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
If there's any questions?
I would just like to comment that the Shabbat for Love and Honor was just a wonderful event. It was a big, wonderful community event, and you're to be congratulated for it.
Absolutely. There's more than one Jewish organization in town, and I can only talk on behalf of Chabad, but the Hillel does a phenomenal job over here, and they pulled off this a tremendous event, and I thank them and their executive director for all of that. But really, I mean, just I hope and I pray that we keep this status long term. I really appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address council? Okay, oh, yep, come on forward.
I'm Ann Fuhrer. I live at 1345 Dana Drive. I'm here this evening speaking for myself as an individual, but also recognizing my professional role as facilitator for Oxford Citizens for Peace and Justice, and as a member of an informal network that we've evolved, the Oxford Homelessness Network. 2 meetings ago, I was here speaking as a squeaky wheel. I intended then to both thank a number of the members of the staff for good work being done, but also to ask for more. I am going to add to praises of Jessica Green's work and sing Jessica's praises for just a minute. I'm particularly pleased that you acknowledge the importance of political will and that you demonstrate it. And I think part of that also comes from your background in social work, really understanding the kinds of values and values into action that are required to deal with really difficult problems like homelessness. I'm glad that someone at the county level is also recognizing that Jessica is ahead of everyone else, and by insisting on evidence-based and best practice solutions, I think, can craft a model that works for Oxford. Now, I'm also speaking as a former executive director of TOPS. My 2.5 years as executive director were pandemic years, and I was constantly pivoting and changing the ways in which we served our customers in order to keep them safe. I know the kind of expertise that it takes to do that, the kind of dedication it takes to do that, the kind of understanding of customers that it takes to do that. And I call on you to have the same kind of faith in the staff members who you acknowledge. And I agree with you about the work that FRC is doing and the staff are doing. we need to figure out what customers need to do and change our practices in order to respond to that. The city's funding to increase the sustainability of your partner nonprofits can empower staff, whether it's the Family Resource Center or another agency, to do the work they do so well. So I think that you could trust that they could develop strategies like the Butler County Housing Authority uses to give points to people on the waiting list who work in wraparound kinds of ways with case managers. I think a similar kind of procedure could be used in Oxford. And they could limit the capacity of the size of a year-round shelter or the cold shelter to people who are Oxford residents, people who work with nonprofits. They can have control of the capacity, they can have control of the criteria that they use. I know that there is fear that if we build it, they will come. Well, Oxford is not Middletown or Hamilton, and they are already here. From looking at the city budgets, I see that public safety is the top priority for funding. Living in honeysuckle thickets is potentially unsafe. Prevention is the key. People who are unhoused are often criminalized while trying to find ways of coping with the stress of poverty, including drug abuse, or breaking into a private property to find a place to get warm. Again, prevention is the key. So I personally, and I think I could identify others who would work in the community with the city to respond in a partnership for nonprofit government citizen collaboration. My initial response to Jessica's proposal for the city's commitment of $50,000 was that it wasn't enough, and I still believe that it's not enough, especially when I look at a $34 million budget. I'm almost done. Thank you, Mayor Snavely. Understanding that many of the funds are restricted. I think many citizens in Oxford want to be generous, and we can do that with leadership that acknowledges
And
that.
I'm really sorry, but your 5 minutes is
Sorry,
up.
okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. As people who come here often will find out, I treat everybody the same, so. But I really appreciate your comments, and I know council does. Are there any other comments for council tonight? Okay, thank you all for coming. We all appreciate it very much. And if you have comments about anything that's on the agenda, we will recognize you at that time. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any items to be removed? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next, we will move to resolutions, and Heather, you may read the first.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to submit eligible projects to the Butler County Board of Commissioners for the 2023 Community Development Block Grant Program year application.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Thank you very much. Jessica?
Good evening. As I mentioned during the work session, it is our hope to apply this community development block grant for the most part toward housing. This year, the county relationship has changed just a little bit, where we used to have an agreement where we got 10% of the allocation hard stop. Well, that has been removed, and so I'm asking for a bit more. So we'll see what they say. They could give us less, just a heads up. I wanted to kind of have a preamble there. So our goal is to apply for $150,000 for improvements to public facilities and the acquisition of land for affordable housing, and then $22,500 will be applied toward administration, so staff time. $50,000 will go toward our already planned expense of public facility improvements to playground improvements in our capital improvement plan, and then $100,000 will be used to acquire land for affordable housing. Once the land is purchased, the city will work with a nonprofit community-based development organization, our new nonprofit that we're working with, to apply for funding to construct housing that will serve 51% low to moderate income individuals or families. That's a requirement to be using the CDBG funds. And then the rest of the funding will be used toward helping with staff time and administration. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. At this time, anyone from the public who would like to address this resolution? Okay. Yeah. Come up and, join us. Give us your name and address for the record.
Do you need my address?
Well, what street you live on is good
Okay.
enough.
Ann Bailey, 192 Stone Creek Drive, Oxford. Jessica, this will be used then beginning 2023. Will it be 1 year or, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ann. Would anyone else like to address this resolution? Okay, counselors, do you have any questions or comments?
I'd just like to mark this kind of a big change in era for us because we've been using CDBG money for quite some time. For as long as I've been in council and before, it's been used for one sole purpose. And the ADA ramps are wonderful, and we've now really boosted accessibility in our community. But the fact that we're kind of mostly done with that means that now we can start thinking about all the other things that this program can bring to us. And I think it's going to allow us to address goals we've been unable to do before. So I look forward to in future years thinking about all the ways we can use this money.
Okay, thanks, David. Anyone else? Are you ready to vote? All those in favor of the resolution indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The resolution's adopted. And Heather, you can read the second.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to apply for the Butler County American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
And it is seconded. Thank you very much. Jessica?
Good evening. Butler County Commissioners received their own $74.4 million in American Rescue Plan funds. And about 18 months ago, they asked us to apply for some funding. And we did for the originally proposed TOPS building, if you can remember that from a long time ago. But with the loss of the Family Resource Director and a new director at TOPS, they really have had a shift where they're like, we cannot do this by 2026. And with also the new home ARPA dollars for the shelter, they said, why don't you consider a pivot? And so I have a confession to make. They called me and said, get this in now. And so this has been submitted, but if you don't like it, I can retract our proposal. So what we proposed was, and I did ask, I said, well, what projects do you like? And they really like our Amtrak project. So I got what I think kind of creative. So what I did is we requested $3 million from the Butler County American Rescue Plan Act toward the renovation of the Tri-Community Center. And as a secondary benefit, this opens up space for Talawanda to move into to allow us to move forward with our Amtrak plan. $1.5 million will go toward the renovation of the inside of the Tri building for communal space, classrooms, preschool, restrooms, office space, that kind of thing. And then 1.5 being designated toward the addition of a seniors wing. And both the Oxford Seniors Board and the Tri Board have been working together, and they're both supportive of this idea. Then, when the seniors move into this wing, and they also said that they feel they can do it by 2026, of most importance. Yes. And then that would open up, the seniors would move out of the building, allowing Talawanda to move in with our current option to trade that we already have in existence with Talawanda. So I have a little flow chart in the back of my staff report on page 60, where you see we apply for Butler County American Rescue Plan Act to renovate the Tri-Center. It adds a wing for the seniors move in. It opens the old seniors building for Talawanda, which allows for us to take over that property for the construction of the Amtrak platform. So that is my recommendation today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. We're looking forward to those dominoes falling appropriately. Would anyone from the public like to address this resolution? Seeing none, counselors, do you have any questions or comments? We're all in favor of the dominoes, I think.
I really appreciated the idea of the intergenerational interactions that could happen. I thought it was, excited about it. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of the resolution indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. The resolution's adopted. And we're ready for the third.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, Division of Forestry, should the city of Oxford be selected to participate in the ODNR Urban Canopy Restoration Grant Program.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mike, welcome.
Good evening, Your Honor, members. Typically, we would not come to council for a grant application of this dollar amount, but it's a requirement for the application, so it's a simple grant reimbursement. We would have spent the money anyway on reforestation, so the state will give us 50% of our money back upon completion.
Okay.
So I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to address this resolution? Seeing none. Counselors, any comments or questions? Seeing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The resolution is adopted, and we'll move to number 4.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Best Equipment Company for the purchase of specified equipment listed in Sourcewell Contract 031121-ODB dated October 11, 2022 for an amount not to exceed $68,935.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Alex. It's been moved and seconded. Mike?
This is for the purchase of a replacement leaf vacuum. So this machine will take approximately a year to get here. So we're hopeful to order it this year and hopefully have it for next leaf season. You might notice the budget amount was a significant amount, $295,000. That was to pay for a truck, but also a very sophisticated one-person machine. We researched that. It had a lot of mechanical issues and reliability issues, so we're not quite there yet. So we're going to recommend to stick with the two-person unit, pardon me, and buy the lower tech but tried and true machine for our needs.
Okay,
Thank
you. Would anyone from the public like to address this resolution? Okay, seeing none. Council? Okay, we see those leaves being scooped up and we want it to continue.
Business is good.
Yeah, it is. This is the season for it. All those in favor of the resolution indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Resolution is adopted. We'll move to number 5.
A resolution accepting the bid and authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Barrett Paving Materials Incorporated for the reconstruction of parts of Walnut Street and to construct parking improvements for the College at Elm project at a cost of $189,587.30 plus a contingency in the amount of $18,958.73 for a total cost not to exceed $208,546.03.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Mike?
So we have two funding sources for this joint project with Miami University to redevelop this site. One is CDBG funds for this year and also funds from the American Rescue Plan Act. The project involves something we've wanted to do for a long time, and that's the reconstruction of West Walnut Street. It's a low-volume street. It dead ends at the railroad, and it never floated to the top to warrant improvements. But in conjunction with this project and with the building of additional parking and other improvements at the site, we're able to accomplish that and move this College at Elm project along. So we worked with the university and their design teams and advertised the project. We only had one bidder, which is concerning, but we've worked with Barrett many, many years. They've always done a great job. The price is high, but within bounds. So we're a victim of a great economy and lots of projects going on where companies just can't commit like they used to because they have so much business.
Okay.
So we're asking for your approval tonight for this contract, and if you do so, we'll contact them immediately tomorrow, and hopefully this nice weather holds, and we can still complete this season.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the resolution? Counselors, any comments or questions? All right, all those in favor of the resolution indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Resolution is adopted. We'll move to number 6.
A resolution determining the total cost of the assessment by lot, authorizing the list of assessments by lot to be filed with the clerk of council, and ordering the same to be opened for public inspection, and authorizing the clerk of council to publish the notice in a newspaper of general circulation that the list of assessments by lots is available for public inspection.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Mike?
This is the third of 4 pieces of legislation required for this assessment program. So council has already approved a resolution of necessity and a construction contract to do the work. The work is completed. We know the exact cost per parcel of the improvement. We had 33 parcels that chose to have the city perform this work this year. So with your approval, we will publish notice of these costs and send a letter by regular U.S. mail to each property owner, as the mayor has suggested for a few years, and give the property owners a chance to pay cash for the improvement, or we can go to the final 4th piece of legislation, which will be an ordinance to levy the costs to the tax duplicate.
Okay.
So I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to address this resolution? Seeing none, council, do you have any questions or comments? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Resolution is adopted. Thank you, Mike. We will move then to ordinances, and we have 5 first readings, and we'll start with the first one when you're ready, Heather.
An ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Oxford, State of Ohio, during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2023.
For those in the public who wonder, we don't have motions and seconds on first reading. We'll do that at second reading, but we will have presentation and discussion. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you.
Take us through this, please.
Yes, the first ordinance is our annual appropriation ordinance. And I'll go through the highlights. It's quite a long document, but I'll just go through the highlights that we have. The total appropriations with transfers and advances is $48,754,457, which is $1,670,720 less than it was the prior year. The total appropriations without transfers and advances is $34,129,163, which is $5,007,312 less than the prior year, and that is driven by the capital improvements. And the 2 main drivers are the Oates Trail that will be late this year, and the engineering for the water softening project. There's a 3% cost of living adjustment for all non-contractual full-time employees. Contracted employees receive their respective increases, and 3.5% for the full-time firefighter paramedics. Income tax receipts for the general fund are projected at $8.9 million, which is a 2.6% increase over 2022. Hotel receipts are $255,000, which is a 15.9% over 2022. And there was a 10.6% decrease in workers' compensation payments for the fire EMS fund, and a 14.11% decrease in workers' compensation for all other funds. And just to point out that most of our operating funds are very heavily skewed towards salary and benefits. In the general fund, in 2023,
I don't
it's
think you have to read that whole table.
Okay, I'll just give the highlights.
Because we've all got it in writing.
It's 71.8%. Total for all the funds is 67.26%. And there was an additional full-time police officer added in the general fund, a full-time environmental specialist, 20% engineering the general fund, and 40% in engineering the water and wastewater funds, and that was a part-time position in 2022. And the full-time assistant to the city manager was now a full-time economic development director. And I guess the big things was there is a 2% increase in the water sales and wastewater collection rates, a 7.4% or $1.25 for residential solid waste collections, and it averaged 6.4% for all commercial customers. Additional $20,000 was added for a consultant for community energy needs study to the capital improvement fund, and total capital equipment purchases is $1,231,928, and capital improvement spending is $5,450,730. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Joe. Would anyone from the public like to address this ordinance? Okay, hearing none, any comments or questions from council?
For those who've not, I mean, we've met a lot, and so I wonder if someone could talk about the process by which we arrive at here. Because we start with a retreat, and so I don't, just so there's a little bit of context, so because by the time it's kind of the sausage is made. But the way the process works is we had a retreat at the beginning of the year that set out some core goals and objectives in addition to maintaining certain needs are just kind of, they're built into the operation of the system. And capital needs, and so we have the capital improvement budget that has long-term capital projects, operational needs, departments and the city manager developed it. We've heard presentations on the capital budget and the operational budget, so these are the top line numbers for us, but they reflect a lot of sausage making over the course of the last 11 months, some of which involving council, but mainly involving staff. So, there's a lot of behind the scenes to balancing a budget as complex and several work sessions. Yeah. So if it seems perfunctory at this stage, it's because there's been a lot of process up to this point.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Any other comments or questions? We'll have this again come up on second reading. Can you read second?
An ordinance outlining budgeted advances for the City of Oxford, State of Ohio, during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2023.
Okay. Joe?
Yes, this is a shorter of the next two, so bear with me. There's advance from the general fund to the capital improvement fund for $112,000 for the uptown restrooms. The current road culvert replacement, $147,500, and install charging vehicle stations, $343,000. And the funds will be reimbursed to the general fund once we receive the money. Part of it's from Ohio Public Works and the other sources that we'll be receiving that money from. There's another advance from the general fund to the Oxford Area Trails Fund, and that's $4,350,000, and that's for the Peffer Park to Talawanda High School Phase 3 and West Side's Connector Phase 4. Those will actually be let this month, but we still have to advance the money because we won't be receiving the money from OKI or the property taxes till after the construction's underway. Next one is just a $5,000 advance we do each year to the Employee Benefit Fund, and that's to make whole the account balance due to early plan use of flexible spending, which is repaid by the employees evenly throughout the year, and that'll be repaid by the end of the year. The next one's a $150,000 advance from the general fund to the Special Assessment Fund, and that's for sidewalk, curb, gutter, and associated paving repair program, and that'll be repaid at the end of the year. And again, last one is $110,000 to OVI Task Force Fund from the general fund, and that's for the OVI Task Force, and that'll be reimbursed as, by the end of the year, and that's the money we get from the Ohio Department of Public Safety throughout the year as we bill them for the monthly invoices.
Super, thank you. Anyone from the public like to address this resolution? Seeing none, counselors? This is an example of a lot of the things that we do towards the end of every year. So thank you, Joe, for your diligence. Any other questions? Okay, we'll hear that at our next meeting. You can read number 3.
An ordinance outlining budgeted transfers for the City of Oxford, State of Ohio, during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2023.
Okay, Joe?
Okay, unfortunately, this is a long one, and the only reason I go through it by each item is because you're supposed to, according to the auditor of state. And again, think of something happy. Like if I was sitting up there, I'd be thinking of the Browns winning their 3rd game last night.
That would probably not be what some of us.
Huh? Well, I know that's fresh, but being a Browns fan since 3rd grade, and it's like our saying is, there's always next year, so. I know what it's like to be on the losing side plenty of times.
Thanks for rubbing it in.
Yeah, it's okay. So the first one is a transfer from the general fund to the street fund. That's $552,621, and that's the annual general fund financial support, and that'll be made quarterly. The next one's a transfer from the general fund to capital equipment fund of $326,114. That's the annual general fund financial support that'll be done quarterly. The transfer from the general fund to the capital improvement fund of $270,502. That's an annual general fund support, and that'll be done quarterly. There's a transfer from the general fund to the aquatic center debt service fund of $311,050, and that's the annual general fund debt service payment, and that'll be done biannually to match debt payment. The next one is the transfer from the general fund to the stormwater fund of $30,000. That's an annual general fund financial support that'll be done in the first quarter. The next one's a transfer from the general fund to special assessment fund of $50,000. That's annual general fund financial support, and that's the first quarter. Next one's a transfer from the general fund to the fire EMS fund of $20,000, and that's the annual general fund financial support, and that'll be done quarterly. The next one's a transfer from the general fund to the small business loan fund of $5,000, and that'll be done in the first quarter. I'm sorry I left that out, but I was copy and paste and then putting in there. But that'll be done in the first quarter. The next one's an annual transfer from the parking fund to the general improvement fund, and that's the annual parking fund payment for service department support. That'll be done quarterly. That's $36,640. Transfer fund from the parking fund to the street fund, and then that's the annual parking fund financial support for work performed, and that's basically at the parking garage. That's done quarterly for $31,185. The next one's a parking fund transfer to the capital improvement fund of $110,000, and that's the annual repayment for a loan to the for the parking garage, and that'll be done quarterly. The next one's a transfer from the parking fund to the parking improvement fund, and that's an annual parking fund financial support that'll be done in the first quarter. That's $192,628. The next one's a transfer from the South Point TIF District 1 fund to the South Point TIF District Debt Service Fund of $266,167. That's the annual TIF debt service payment that'll be biannually to match debt service payment. The next one is a transfer from the South Point TIF District 2 to the South Point TIF District Debt Service Fund of $6,763, and that's the annual South Point TIF Fund debt service payment that'll be biannually matched debt service payment. The next one's a transfer from the South Point TIF District 3 to the South Point TIF Debt Service Fund of $10,148. That's the annual South Point TIF Fund debt service payment, and that's biannual and match the debt service payment. The next one is South Point TIF District 4 to the South Point TIF Debt Service Fund of $10,125. That's the annual South Point TIF debt service payments. That's biannual to the match the debt payment. The next one's the South Point TIF District 5 to the South Point TIF Debt Service Fund of $10,072. That's the annual TIF Fund debt service payment. That's biannual to match debt service payment. The next one's a transfer from the Oxford Area Trails Property Tax Fund to the Oxford Area Trails Capital Improvement Fund of $1,035,000, and that's the annual property tax transfer, and that's biannual to the match the receipt of the property taxes. The next one's a transfer from the water fund to the general fund of $42,690, and that's the annual water fund's financial support for mowing and the muni cost building expenses. That'll be done quarterly. The next one's a transfer from the water fund to the water capital improvement fund of $112,040 annual water fund financial support. That'll be in the first quarter. And the next one's a transfer from the water fund to the water capital improvement fund. That's $272,819. That's the annual water fund financial support in the first quarter. Wastewater fund to the general fund of $42,690. That's the annual wastewater fund financial support, and that's for mowing and the muni cost building expense, and that'll be done quarterly. Wastewater funds to the wastewater capital improvement fund of $75,937. That's the annual wastewater fund financial support that'll be done in the first quarter. Transfer from the wastewater fund to the wastewater capital improvement fund of $107,413. That's the annual wastewater fund financial support that'll be done in the first quarter. And finally, the transfer from refuse fund to the general fund of $32,690. And that's the annual refuse fund financial support for muni building expenses, and that'll be done quarterly.
Well, that was fun.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you for taking us through that. And I will once again ask if anyone from the public would like to address the ordinance. And hearing none, counselors, do you have any questions or comments on this one? I didn't think so.
Tongue twister with the TIF district.
Yeah, I know.
South
There's
Point.
so many. Yeah, it is.
But I appreciate the transparency. I mean, these are public dollars. I mean, we have a budget of
People
$34
have
million
every right.
worth of public dollars. And so it's a perfunctory, feels like a perfunctory process, but it needs to be audited and said out loud in public so people could know how we're spending our money. And luckily, it's managed in a trustworthy way in the city of Oxford. But
You're
the
right,
system's
Dave.
designed because it's good to know where the money is. So thank you.
Thanks, Joe. All right, I think we're ready for number 4.
An ordinance to adopt fees and charges for fiscal year 2023.
Joe?
Yes, this is each year department heads go through the fee ordinance and make any additions, changes, or deletions that they feel necessary for the year. So if you have any questions, they can be directed toward the respective department head.
Okay, I think we probably will.
Yeah.
Would anyone from the public like to address this ordinance on fees? Okay, seeing none, counselors, questions that you might have? I know I've marked several that I want to ask about, but go ahead.
So I appreciate that we want to move through this, but I also, at some level, it would probably not be terrible to have a work session about the fee ordinance, because sometimes there are things that we might want to discuss, but we have first and second readings. The one thing that just jumped out at me is that there were new fees related to the installation of electrical vehicle charging, solar-mounted arrays with batteries. And I recognize that there are inspection costs related to their construction projects, right? But I know that other cities have sought to waive those fees as a way of providing, I mean, there's limited things a city can do to incentivize renewable energy development by its citizens. I mean, right now the federal government's providing a lot of money, but so cities do what they can by either streamlining the permitting or waiving the fees. And I've seen that some cities, and Doug maybe got deeper into that they had waived some of the fees, but not some other ones. And so I just questioned whether, it seems like a small thing we could do to incentivize, and granted, it's not going to sway a person one way or the other, but given how limited abilities we have, it's one tool we have. I guess our National Inspection Corporation has to be paid for inspections, so it's a matter of where the money comes from. But is there a way in an economy like this, of this budget, to, if one were to say, we would like to waive this because it yes, there's an administrative cost, but it matches up with our values to waive a fee. How do we do we do that with other things, or could money be found, or where would that money have to come from if we wanted to waive those fees?
Doug, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I did send an email out to council. I mean, we already charge for a solar array $80 plus $5 per panel. And of course, as David mentioned, that's not, I mean, that alone isn't going to stop someone from doing it. But, it is a good point if we want to incentivize people to do it. I mean, maybe we just keep it at that rate because we pay NIC 90% of what we charge. And they're suggesting that, we raise it, which gives them more money, but I think it's based on what time they're putting in.
Yeah.
So, we listen to them because they're the firm that we've contracted with. So, I understand David's point. I did, he had provided me some information from Ann Arbor, and I did, like David said, look into it a little deeper, and it looked like they had other fees that they were still charging, but it wasn't able to access all the information on the website, so I sent an email to the deputy building commissioner to kind of find out what they're doing up there. But it is a bit of an increase from 80 to 90, and then from $5 to $5.50 per panel. We did add a solar array with battery storage. I'm not sure too many homeowners have battery storage, but as batteries improve, they may choose to do that. I don't know, Sam, do we have any with battery storage now? Yeah,
So, and on this electric vehicle chargers, does that mean that if a citizen wants to put in their own battery charger in their garage, they need to get a permit and have to pay $90 for it?
I just looked at Sam and he shook his head yes, so.
Well, it's $200 I saw for the first electric vehicle charging station, if that's maybe commercial.
So
Commercial's 200, residential.
I don't think most people in town realize that that's a requirement. Can people who've already put them in ask forgiveness and then pay this fee?
Most of the electricians working in town know they need a permit to add any circuitry. So unless they're a electrician that is more fly-by-night, then these shouldn't be happening. And they would just be, I think it's more of a wording change for us.
Okay.
Just so our frontline staff can kind of know where to categorize things.
Okay.
Whereas before it was just an electrical permit. It wasn't specific to a charger. But now we know what it is, and it's easy for our frontline staff to just process that without wondering what bucket to put it in.
I just want to support David's comment, and I think we want to incentivize these things rather than disincentivize them by raising all those fees if we don't have to.
Just a weird question about the EV chargers. There are two different kinds, actually three. We are only specifying the 200 plus volt ones, correct? Like we're not dealing with the 110 stuff that you just plug into any regular wall.
I don't think we differentiate. If you're gonna put,
Well, there's no charger otherwise you just take your plug and you put it into a regular receptacle.
That's what I mean. So like when the line says electric vehicle charger, I can literally plug something into the wall, but would that still necessitate me to have a $90 charge?
No. If it's a circuit already there, no.
Okay.
Yep.
We're talking about the type 1, the type 2, and the type 3 chargers. So we don't differentiate.
While we're on that subject, and we'll take on others, but do you have a comment on that?
Minor. I agree that we should incentivize things that we think are good like this as much as possible. But if it doesn't end up changing somebody's mind and that money comes from us, it'd be better to put that money in a fund and then use it for something that does incentivize more people to do it. If that makes sense.
Except 90% of that fee goes to NIC.
Right. Yeah, so it doesn't matter.
Except really.
But if we covered that, then that would be coming from someplace else.
So electric vehicle charging stations is something that primarily is going to be done by the city, I assume. A charging station?
Well, I mean, you might have a homeowner that puts in a 220 amp charger.
So they have to pay $200?
Where's that?
Commercial's
That's
200.
on page
I think.
102. Electric
Sam, help me
vehicle
out.
charging
I
station.
think that's a commercial building, so if a business wanted to install one.
I think that's in the same category, so I would just ask staff to look at it to see whether that could be moderated a little bit. I have a question on page 100. There's BZA variance petitions, both went down. I'm just curious about that because everything else is going up.
Yeah. There was a fire department review fee added a few years ago, and we just wanted to clean that up because it's embedded now as a separate fee, and so it's really no change. It's just a clarification. It's broken out in a separate department, and it has been actually for a couple of years, but we were not double charging it, so we're just lowering all those planning and zoning cases to reflect what we're actually doing because the fire review fee's being covered somewhere else.
It's just nice to see some fee go down.
So it's not really going down.
I know.
appears
Just-
that way.
It doesn't appear that way.
And my only other question is, it feels like we had conversations in the past about the pool fee. Are we happy now that we found the right model for charging people at the pool? I mean, it looks like we've kind of hit a number. It's gone up a little bit, but that was one of the big kind of conversations we had last year, the year before.
Hi, Casey. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So the question is, are we happy with
the fees?
The fees.
And the membership, the daily, the family, we had a lot of conversation about that last year.
We have, yeah. We knew it was going to take us a season or two, and then of course our second season was COVID, so we couldn't really rely on that season at all. So we needed 2019 and 2021 and now 2022 to see what our expenses were going to be, how much revenue was going to come in based on memberships, based on swim team, based on how many people were coming each summer. So we feel like we've found a pretty good balance, and we're trying to make sure that we're able to cover not just the costs of 3 months, but the costs that we know are coming, because a big facility like the Aquatic Center is going to come with a big cost at some point. You know, it's still very new, so we're not having those really big expenses yet, but at some point we know they're coming. So we're trying to keep that in mind too.
Okay.
And we also know that wages are going up, and so we're trying to stay ahead of the game a little bit and being able to pay those staff a number that they'll return to and keep working for us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Not yet. The fee for parking, I wanted to acknowledge with gratitude the reduction, but do you want to talk about? I mean, I think we want to incentivize certain areas.
Yes, I wanted to bring this up for debate. You'll notice on page 104, parking, the good news is it's not going up, but in one area going down, and that's something that I would like council to talk about. It's come up before, as we do resolutions on smart meters, and there's been debate, and quite honestly, sometimes I feel like I'm on the hot seat about these parking fees, and quite honestly, this is the opportunity for council to set the parking fees.
Right.
So we felt that amongst staff, if to address some business owner comments essentially in the 0 blocks of North and South Poplar and the 0 blocks of North and South Beach, of lowering the rate down to 50 cents per hour. And I think that's been talked about before. Not everybody agrees on that, but generally it's a lower occupied area, except for that 0 block of North Beach where you have the barbershop and Cafeteria with the angled spots. And we're also talking about making it 10-hour parking, so you can park longer than 2, but that would be separate. That's not for this discussion necessarily.
Right.
That's a traffic memo, and we probably wouldn't want to do that in the Cafeteria area. But it does lower parking when you look at our revenues versus our operating costs with changes we've made. There's room for this, I believe. But I would like council's guidance on that.
Thank you.
It would be easy to leave it the same, but I think it addresses some of Mayor Snavely's comments and other comments I've heard.
One other quick thing. How is the usage at the parking garage? Are we typically full up on that?
the parking
those-
garage.
yeah, those
The
meters.
public parking meters. No, I think there's times where there's not high
I've gone
occupancy.
in there to charge, and every time I go in there, it's
low occupancy.
Yeah.
But it's a great overflow lot for when you have events or it's a busy time. A lot of cars will go there. So
Did
it's.
you give any thought to reducing the rate in there to incentivize people to use that and open up spaces?
I think that's come up in discussions, and we looked at different areas. But again, like that's really the thought with there. Not to get too far down a rabbit hole, is to lease that whole thing out, because we have reserved. We have plenty of people on a waiting list that would love to reserve a spot there, but the public spots are nice when you have an event going on and you have some overflow parking, or on a family weekend or on something busy. But this was kind of our staff, and with economic development and city manager's office, this was kind of in response to the council comments that have happened in the past. So,
David, did you want to comment on this? I saw your hand.
I mean, the Parking and Transportation Board is one of the boards that interacts with this, and we have not seen this at that time, so I'm not sure what folks' input would be. I know that you have arguments for this. I think those zero blocks, it's $1 an hour. People sit there, beat the meters all day long anyway. I would listen to what other people. I wouldn't have necessarily been inclined to want to change it, but I'm not necessarily going to amend the budget to undo what's here. So.
Okay.
I think we have talked about it in the Parking and Transportation Board in the past, and I don't think there was a desire to change it.
Yeah.
But then I haven't brought this forward to a bunch of their meetings. So.
We
Go
did
ahead.
bring this up with Oxford Parking and Transportation, and I'm sorry, Council President, you weren't there, but they voted to not make any action. They said not to do anything, to leave it the way it was. Yeah.
Okay.
This was a while.
Any other
Okay,
councilors
thanks.
want to
Yeah.
chime in on parking fees?
That was my default, to leave it as is.
I think it would be nice to have some place for employees uptown to park that's a little less expensive, particularly for over the summer. Like it does when you make $3 in tips and then you put all $3 in the meter. If it's $1.50 that you put in the meter and you're still walking away with $1, it's less demoralizing to have that happen. And so I do hear what you're saying, that people will just feed the meter, but I think people would do that if it's 50 cents or $1. But to me, it is a show of solidarity to uptown employees to give them a cheaper spot to park if it's open.
I
Isn't
don't.
that the case with Walnut?
Yeah, I don't think that's probably where employees should park. If they were going to be there all day, they should pay one of the long-term meters, or they should park for free on some of the streets that are parallel to High Street. But I appreciate throwing the bone of the 50 cents.
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, the other benefit to it, I mean, it's obviously parking fees are not popular. And we bear that. I know, we've heard that before. This proposal, I does think, kind of gives you like that political bone like that you're talking about, and it's good for council. But yeah, it's kind of meeting in the middle where we're pushing back that we don't want to lower all these fees when we've already done this. But these two areas, we could stomach that being lowered there.
That'd be worth a try, maybe.
To your point with the employees out, you can still use the app in the 10-hour zones, correct? Like those are
Yes.
zoned out?
Yes, you can use the app.
That seems to me the ideal solution for employee parking, because that's a zone. There's multiple parking spaces that they can park at, and it'll be a 10-hour parking thing. So they spend, we'll call it $5 for the 10-hour day, and then you don't run into that situation. Because I thought about the same thing, and then I ended up having to park in one of those 10-hour zones, and I realized it. I was like, oh, 10 hours is $3.55 or something like that, and I had zero issues after that. So
I think employees need to realize that if they're wanting to park right in front of the place that they work, that they are preventing their customers from coming in because they're parking in those spots.
the idea is turnover.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but it's also I do want to note it's not like as somebody who has parked directly in front of the place that they work, it's not nefarious. You're not saying, oh, I'm going to take a spot. Sometimes it's reality versus like if it's you have to park where you have to park, and if you're running late coming from class, what have you.
I understand all that, but since 1977, I've been parking uptown at various times of the day and evening, and I have never failed to find a place to park, usually for free, a block away.
I have spoken, sorry to cut you off,
That's all right.
spoken to some people who work in restaurants uptown, and they've expressed that there are times when there's an event or something like that, maybe they were just able to grab a spot that happens to open up in front of or very close to where they work, and that having a slightly lower fee would make a positive impact on what they're able to take home, as Alex said.
Isn't this all self-defeating? If we make it lower, it incentivizes other people to park there as much as it does employees. And it's also self-defeating, as you said, you're taking up the spots for the businesses. Because I care about the employees way more than a well-profiting business, but it hurts their own cause, I think, in the end. I think it's better to...
The idea is turnover for consumers.
That's why I feel and I feel like the short blocks, this is why, like, maybe I'm not going to go stand in the way, but don't make those 10-hour meters. I mean, like, I think, let's, I mean, if we want to throw a bone, that's fine, but those zero blocks are also important spillover parking for businesses. So let's not clog them up with
They can park a block away.
Yeah, that's...
I mean, the idea is Church and Walnut, that's the low areas for where employees could go to park. Now, I mean, that's the thing, it's hard to differentiate between different classes of people who are parking. That's where the fees are the great equalizer.
Yep.
And by having those long-term, low-cost spots, I mean, that's where an employee should look to park or further out.
Do we have on our website a map that shows the different parking zones?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that might be just a good informational blurb, because I've had a lot of people talk to me and go, I don't know which is 10 hour, I don't know which is $2 an hour, 50 cents an hour or $1 an hour. Yeah. And I just think that it's an awareness thing.
Sure. And so part of this too with the 50 cents, I mean, there's always been some reluctance on our part to change that, because now once again you have different rates in different spots and it's confusing. But I mean, I think again, going from one to one, you're going down. So
this is
I don't
our
know
only
that there's
proposed change. Maybe we can.
I think the consensus I hear is fine, just go with what you've proposed.
Okay.
And it's a compromise. I'm gonna take any other questions about it, and then I think I'm gonna open it up to the public again, because now they see what this is really about. They might have some commentary that they would like to share. So are there any other items on the fee agenda that people have questions about? I have one more, so.
I could just make one comment. I posted that map because the public often yells at me for positions on parking. And I did some math, and I believe a 25-cent spot is no more than like several hundred feet away from anywhere on Main Street. Like,
it's a short walk.
It's not an issue if you just know where to go, because I don't want employees who aren't making that much having to deal with that.
My question is on the recycling and refuse rates. If we're talking residential, there's residential refuse rates, which I see are going up modestly. I was confused about the recycling rate for residential. I know that when you I assume that goes to waste wheeler.
No, it's actually it's built into that rate.
It's built in?
Yes.
Okay, because I saw recycling as a separate category, that's why I was confused.
That's the actual wheeler itself.
Okay.
People rent those, but the actual cost to
all right, so
pickup's built into the
as
rate.
somebody who's renting a waste wheeler for my recycling, because I do a lot more recycling than I do garbage, you're raising it from $4 1/4 to $13.50.
It's included in your rate if you get a tote, if you're residential.
Yeah.
So you can ignore that. If you follow.
What is that fee for then?
That. Yeah, that's for solid waste, not recycling.
All right.
Sorry, it's confusing.
That's
but,
okay.
You know, we
That
got all
answers
these
my
rates
question.
for the different size
No,
dumpsters.
you answered my question. It's just confusing when you look at all
Yeah.
those rates.
And basically, we're gonna be paying Rumpke 3% more for their contract.
Now,
next year. That's-
when we take over the Oxford Cemetery,
Yes.
I noticed that we have a fee for Woodside Cemetery. Are we gonna have an amendment to this to add fees?
We'll
for
probably incorporate that in next year's.
Next year's
We're
budget.
gonna be managing it probably for several months, and,
Okay.
you know, I would expect that we would just keep their rates.
All right.
Which are different than ours, but if you want, we could amend it at some time, or just do it next year.
Yeah, I think that's probably fine. Just continue with what we've got for now.
I mean, there's some rates in here that we really don't need to have because they're the law. For example, we used to have a cable franchise fee, and it's called a service fee now. The state tells us what we can charge. Why that's in there, since we don't have any choice.
Yeah.
You know, so,
But there it is.
But it's, it's been in there since before I got here. So.
Okay. Any other counselors have questions or comments about any of the fees? Anyone from the public want to address these fees now that you know what this ordinance is about? Again, give us your name and address, and you get 5 minutes if you need it.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I apologize for not fully reading all the way to the bottom.
That's okay.
Before I said no before. So Amy Shaman, Heather Ridge Court here in town. I think all of this is really reasonable, and I appreciate all the many hours of effort that have clearly gone on to this. My comment on two specific aspects of these fees is really about how we make sure that the disadvantaged in our community have the opportunity for connection with one another, for some childcare, and for some recreation. Specifically, if we look at the Tri-Community Center, so I'm no longer the mom of a young child, I have a school-age child, but when I was a mom of a young child, I know that many of my friends who had children of similar ages really struggled, especially in the wintertime, for connection. And the toddler open gym at the Tri was a place of refuge and connection, finding resources, really feeling as a place of community. And apparently, and I lost track of the cost, apparently that used to be completely free. And now when people want to go to the toddler gym, and Casey, please correct me if I'm misreading, but apparently now if a parent wants to bring their child for an hour of open play on a freezing cold day, when we've had weeks and weeks that they can't take a little child to the playground to also connect with another parent, now they have to come up with $20 up from $14, which to many of us who have privilege, that $6 is 2 times at Starbucks or whatever, but for someone who's barely scraping by, that's a pretty significant increase in money. So I encourage there to be some thought into if there can be a way to offset that maybe for people who have no other way to connect with others. And then the one other comment that is similar, although it's not directly necessarily impacting the most financially disadvantaged in a similar way, and I've just lost my scroll, is for the Aquatic Center. I know that families who have more than 2 kids in our community have been making a financial choice not to use the Aquatic Center because it is extremely expensive when you have to pay for each additional child every time you go or up your membership. I didn't know if there was any consideration to having households that if there was a price for a household that has larger families as a household of 1 child and 2 adults. I know that sometimes we'll pay a little bit more for others, but I know that I'm aware of a number of families with more than 2 kids who have had that family. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll invite Casey to come up. While he's coming up, I would point out that the fees for the Tri are yearly membership fees, not hourly. Yeah.
Correct. So to address her first point, actually, Amy, I'm glad she brought this up because we changed our model several years ago to be from what was like $120 a year to be a member down to $6 a year to be a member. And we did that because we wanted to get more people into the Tri, right? We had this underutilized building, and we thought at the end of the day, we want people being physically active and coming inside and meeting people and just getting out and about. So we made this really low rate that everybody thought we were crazy for, but all of a sudden we have like over 100 members where we had about 20 before. So we achieved our goal by going super cheap. One of the, I guess, unintended consequences we didn't think about in the beginning was the Toddler Tuesdays program, which was always completely free, as Amy said. Now we required this yearly fee, which at the time of $6 was no big deal. People paid it. We are increasing that, but we are not requiring that this year to come in just for that hour on Tuesdays. So, and that is different. That's changed. So that $20 isn't something you have to pay the first time you walk in the door to come in on Tuesday and bring your toddler to play at the gym. So, you're welcome. To answer the second question about household season passes to the aquatic center, it's set up as a household of 4. So the price you see is a household of 4, 2 adults, 2 kids. If you have more than 2 kids, there's a $25 fee per kid that you just add on for the summer for that 5th kid or 5th person, 6th person, 7th person, whatever. It's just $25 per person, which in relative cost to the initial $200, $25 is almost nothing for the entire summer that you're adding that next person on. So they don't have to pay every time they come to the pool. They pay one time up front when you buy your season pass for that 5th person or however, I don't know. So.
And it's still a great deal.
Our fees are very much in line with every other aquatic center in the area and what they charge for the summer. If you look at Fairfield, I think you'll see a much, much higher rate than what we're charging.
Everyone's aware we have a scholarship program.
We do, yeah. So
for those who can't afford
it. We use the same criteria Talawanda uses for free and reduced meals. So you fill out the paperwork. We do require some paperwork, but you fill it out, turn it in, and as long as they meet those criteria, we hand over a free season pass. So.
Okay. Thank you very much, Casey.
I was just going to say, do you feel like the public knows about that enough?
I feel like the amount of requests we get every summer is about the same. It's around 10 to 12. We try to make sure people know. We know the school counselors all know about it. They all reach out directly to us, or they're making sure their students and families they work with know.
Okay, thanks, Casey. Sam?
I just wanted to make sure there was no confusion on the solar panel and the charger. There's existing permit fees. We're just giving them names, and that's maybe where the question's coming from. So if there's something that we need to study, it could be on how we could maybe backfill that cost if we decided to waive them, which might be a few $1,000s to pay our building inspectors, but that would be really the only research we would need to do between now and second reading.
I think if you could just think about how could they be reduced. I don't think they need to be completely eliminated, but that would, if you could do that before second reading, I think a number of people would be happy with it. Are there any other questions or comments on the fees? Seeing none, we'll go to number 5. Heather?
An ordinance establishing salaries and certain benefits for salaried and hourly full-time and part-time employees within the service of the City of Oxford, Ohio, paid from January 1, 2023 through December 31st, 2023.
Okay, thank you very much. Jessica?
Good evening. Joe Newland spoke a lot about some of these numbers and the budget, so I'm going to go quite quickly. But this is our salary ordinance, and it does let you know the changes we're making in our staffing for next year that is planned. Under full-time staff, we have an additional 2 FTE with 1 new position, a police officer, and the promotion of 2 part-time staff to full-time. That would be the climate sustainability person and another one. The kindergarten, their preschool teacher. Thank you. Then we also have a few promotions of staff. One being the assistant to the city manager to economic development coordinator. One is the promotion of the planner to the city planner GIS coordinator, and then fire division promotion of the admin assistant 2 to office manager. And then for those pay bands, a 3% cost of living adjustment across the board.
Okay.
In the section 3 under part-time staff, minimum wage is going up to $10.10 an hour. So we adjusted the minimum and we increased the maximum up to $17 an hour. We feel that that's important to be able to attract staff for these positions. Again, a 3% cost of living adjustment across the board for that. For seasonal part-time, similar change in the minimum and maximum from $10.10 per hour for the minimum up to $17 an hour for the maximum for that laborer, parks and rec technician position. And again, we adjust that rate by 3%. Under vacation accrual, we just clarified the language a little bit to make it a little bit more clear. And then some other grammatical changes. We removed the gender language under the police chief section. Under section 6, we did change the call-in pay. So when people get called in for an emergency from 2 hours to 3 hour minimum, to be in line with the other contract for staff who aren't in labor unions, the other staff get that same call-out pay. Under benefits, we've been doing this for many years where we get you get a premium increase if you choose not to participate in the biometric screening that the city offers. But we've never had it in the salary ordinance, and so this year we're adding that in. So if you choose to not partake in the biometric screening, which is offered by the city where you can go to your own doctor or you can go to a lab, then there is a $10 premium increase for that program. And then we've just made some grammatical corrections to the holiday, or excuse me, the holiday pay schedule. It still said 15 and it's 16. We removed specific firefighter language under group life insurance now that they have a CBA. And vacation, we did a clarification for prior use of service. Again, it's kind of just a grammatical clarification. Attachment A shows a 3% increase across all of the pay bands, kind of just showing those ranges. And then attachment B has been removed because it was specific to the firefighters, and they now have a contract, so it's not needed anymore. It was their pay scale, which now is part of the contract.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to answer any questions. That was a very high-level review.
Thank you very much. I'll first ask if there's anyone from the public who wishes to address this ordinance. Seeing none, any counselors have questions or comments?
I appreciate seeing things the council has been talking about. The preschool teacher was something the councilors raised as an issue in the community, and y'all found a way to find money in the budget for it. We've been talking about how to enhance our capacity for sustainability, and that's in here. And I'm glad to hear you're addressing some staffing issues in the police department, among other things. So thank you for listening to us and trying to find a way to squeeze it in.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, let's move to second readings. Can read the first one.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 3654, supplemental budget ordinance number 8, to make supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2022.
Is there a motion to adopt this ordinance?
So moved.
It's been moved by Prithurch and seconded by Ragu. Are there any changes there?
No changes from
Okay.
first reading.
Is anyone from the public interested in commenting on this ordinance? Okay. Counselors, do you have any additional comments? Seeing none, you can call the roll.
Mr. Ellerby?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. French?
Yes.
Mr. Prethridge?
Yes.
Ms. Ragu?
Yes.
Mr. Bracken?
Yes.
Mayor Snavely?
Yes.
Thank you.
The ordinance is adopted. You can read the second one.
An ordinance approving a 6-month extension of the approved final subdivision and construction drawings and amending a condition of the approved final plan development for South Farm Section 4.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a motion to adopt this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any changes?
No changes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone from the public like to address this one? Okay, we discussed it last time, and South Farm is the one that's off of Roberts Drive and was discussed during our work session, okay? If there's discussion by council, not seeing any, I would ask for the roll.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. French?
Yes.
Mr. Prethridge?
Yes.
Ms. Ragu?
Yes.
Mr. Bracken?
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby?
Yes.
Mayor Snavely?
Yes. Ordinance is adopted. Would anyone wish to remove from the table the ordinance amending Chapter 935? If it is not removed, then our law director, Ben, has told us that will go away, given our earlier discussion. If you want it to be on the agenda and have a vote on it, then you should move to take it off the table.
I move to take it off the table.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to take it off the table. You can read the ordinance.
An ordinance amending Chapter 935, trees, shrubs, and other plants by adding Section 935-191, managed natural lawn area.
Okay, I think we need a vote first on removing it from the table. So all those in favor of removing it from the table, if you would say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
I'll ask for a raise of hands because I don't know. So,
I would have requested the public get a chance to speak on it before making this, which is, I tried to sneak that in, but I didn't get it in beforehand.
Let's just take it off the table.
you can do that. I will allow anybody to talk about anything they want to. Is anybody eager to talk about this again? Okay, well, wait, just wait. That gives us information, so. Okay, let me say again then, we have a motion to remove this from the table. Those in favor of removing it from the table, raise your hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, the motion passes. It's off the table, and would anyone from the staff like to talk about it anymore? Has anything changed? I don't think it has. Anyone from the public? Now's your chance. We have to go through all those steps. Again, your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Steve Sullivan, 104 Marty Court. So last time this was up, I spoke very briefly, and I really appreciate the opportunity to sort of repent for my brevity last time. As you know, I take the 5 minutes. I was kind of surprised to hear that making this an ordinance as opposed to a resolution would cost tax dollar money, and that's kind of where I went. Is I trust staff to, in their evaluations, and I don't want to spend extra tax dollar money. But maybe to elaborate on some of my thoughts, the proposed ordinance did take a lot of time and effort and passion. That alone is not sufficient reason to pass it, though, but that does exemplify the fact that lots and lots of people in town are committed to this thing. And in fact, a lot of other community groups have formed around this. This ordinance is more than simply cosmetic or horticultural. With climate change upon us, the ability to do these things explicitly, not just implicitly, as the law apparently presently allows, is key to creating a sustainable and beautiful future for Oxford. When I heard Sam and Jessica say that this would be a financial burden and a staff challenge, it was, as I said, very surprising. I trust them, and I value their work and their opinions, and I don't want to simply spend extra money on something that is otherwise completely allowed. But that said, I wonder what the extra money that would need to be spent is, and I apologize for not making time this week to try to find that out. But if indeed everything that we are proposing in this ordinance is actually already allowed, and we have resolved the enforcement issues, then in fact it seems like it shouldn't be costing any extra money. So I don't understand, where the extra costs would come from. I very much value Jessica's outreach campaigns that she's done in the past, and I know that if this were a resolution, that those outreach campaigns would be effective. I haven't yet seen the plan, but as was testified earlier in this meeting, if there are changes to this plan or work that needs to be done, I would volunteer to assist with that. And you guys know that I've kind of made myself available to the city this year for doing those kinds of things. So to reiterate, I emphatically trust the staff, and if they say it's going to cost money, then I want to think about that money. But given the superficiality of my understanding of the issue, I don't see how it can cost any extra money. And I know that there's a public demand for this, that it will make a massive difference to the city, and that this being an explicit ordinance is really important to the city. So unless there is some other cost that I can volunteer to help defray, then I would urge passage of the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan, appreciate it. Would anyone else like to address this ordinance?
Peggy Brandstrader, 18 Meadow Circle. I've been involved in lots of discussions of this ordinance as a member of the Environmental Commission, which is where I believe this started. I know that there's been some reluctance about staff thinking it's making their job harder. And in my work on these issues, I think this is going to make their job easier. And let me explain why. Right now, in order to respond to a complaint, the code officer must differentiate between taller than 10-inch turf grass, like Kentucky bluegrass, which is not allowed, and taller than 10-inch native prairie grass, like little blue stem, which is allowed. I wouldn't want to do that. And that little purple flower, is it a cultivated aster or is it a Canadian thistle, which is on the state noxious weed list? This revision calls for homeowners to have a plan if they're going to do native lawn, so that the burden of proof shifts to the landowner, not the code enforcement officer. All he has to do is ask for the plan. Secondly, I've heard testimony that native plantings are allowed under the current ordinance, but that's not clear. That's one interpretation of the ordinance, may not be the only one. Certainly many people don't understand this, and we've had testimony of people who've been cited for native plantings under the weed ordinance, so apparently that's not totally clear to code enforcement people either. I think we really need to clarify this. We're interpreting it a certain way now. In 10 years, when different people are in the jobs, they may interpret it very differently. This discussion may come up over and over and over again with different outcomes. So the way to clarify that, I think, is to have an ordinance that makes this a little clearer. We've had the proposal about a resolution, but all the resolutions I've seen at this council have to do with short-term issues. They're not long-term policy issues, and this is a long-term policy issue. So I think it needs an ordinance. Now, maybe it needs a slightly different ordinance. Maybe there's some things that we still need to work on. I don't know if one of the options is to send this back to the Environmental Commission for more work and work with staff. I don't know if that's a legal thing that we can do. That might be a possible solution. But I do think that we need to clarify this, and I don't think an education campaign and a resolution is going to solve the problem. For one thing, resolutions, I think, are easy to get lost. We need to have the language about this issue all in the same place, so somebody who's interested in complying can do it. There's a lot of different ways this can be done. I'm a little bit reluctant to endorse a plan where we have too much set in stone, too many guidelines. I think it needs to be pretty open-ended. The homeowner can come up with a plan. We have community resources for homeowners, for code enforcement officers who may have a question about whether a plan works. A number of things. Things could be referred back to the Environmental Commission. There are also numerous groups in town, volunteer groups, which could help with this if that's the way to do it. But I think the idea is we do need an ordinance that clarifies the situation, or we're going to have this discussion again in 5 years.
Thank you, Peggy. Would anyone else like to address it? Come on forward. Welcome.
Hello. Hello again, everyone. My name is Antonio Alejandro. I live in 231 Western College Drive. I want to come up here and just said more support for Mr. Sullivan's comments. I know last meeting I had talked in favor of this resolution, and again, I wanted to emphasize my trust in staff and council. But after some thought and discussion, I worry that where these costs would be coming from, because again, this might come from my naivety, but I have no idea where the cost would come from, and I'd worry that it would cost more to put a campaign for these materials rather than to just put in this ordinance or to take it back and have some more work on it. And I also want to reiterate that I would be more than happy to work my backside off to make this happen if more work needs to be done. So, thank you.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate your comments. Would anyone else like to address it? Yep.
John Malinowski, 3 Peabody Drive. As chair of the Environmental Commission, I'd really like to see this get passed as a, as a resolution. Be happy to work with city and staff to make this so. So let's try to work something out.
Did you mean resolution or ordinance?
You meant ordinance?
Ordinance.
Okay.
I mean, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? Okay. Counselors, discussion?
So I'm going to go first because I voted not to take this off the table, put this on the table last time, because in all of our conversations, and we've had lengthy ones about this, and I'm trying to understand, to me, we came up with a 6.5 plus dozen or the other. Solution 1 was an ordinance that was explicit, for which you would have to do some kind of education of staff and all the people about what would be done. So it would have to be an ordinance plus some education. Then the flip side is, well, we could do a resolution plus some education. And either way, it seems to me like when you go out there, you're going to have to determine what you're looking at. So some kind of explicit guidelines are going to have to come from somewhere so the homeowner and the staff person can know what's there. But the more I've talked about it, you know, the more we've talked, the more I've come around thinking that this, I can't see, if it's 6.5 one dozen the other, I would say, I respect what Jessica was saying about that this wasn't on the agenda, but also that didn't cost the city money to develop. Citizens from the bottom up developed and crafted a really good ordinance. I have some minor modifications to it. It wasn't on our agenda, but I think that our system is we try to do guidance from the top down, but many of the best ordinances that we've crafted in the city of Oxford in the last 15 years have been people pushing them up. So that in our role of the planning commission, we rarely had an invitation from city council to adopt a pedestrian and bicycle safety guidelines. We had to push it up against the so I think that given all the craft, I see this as a good ordinance, and I think that I guess I understand the resistance, but I also have trouble understanding it. And so I also see the passionate people who craft an ordinance that we can act on, and I see it like a good workable ordinance. I think all of us are happy to help on the crafting of website content or anything else to help educate people and help people on that side, as long as the city can manage it. So I'm still in support of this ordinance. I'm grateful that people can craft it for us. I do have some suggested modifications that I shared with staff earlier. I mean, I think that we should mandate that people have a plan and they have the burden of proof to prove that, and that becomes the moment, the enforcement moment, which is what's the plan, show it to me, rather than specifying stuff. So we can talk about that if there's other people who support the ordinance.
Could I offer some comments?
Please.
First off, we've never cited anybody for growing something else besides tall grass.
I didn't think so.
So let that be known. You know, I've asked Sam, we haven't cited anybody for ornamental grass over 10 inches or any plants, native plants. But if you have turf grass over 10 inches, you're going to get cited. Okay? So, you know, that needs to be known. The cost is going to be for the code enforcement officer. We have one code enforcement officer. David's talking about submitting a plan. Who's going to review that plan? That's going to take time. They have, 2 years to transition that. Who's going to follow that and make sure they stay within the 2 years? I mean, you know, if anything, if you want to pass this, I would say have the Environmental Commission manage this program. They submit an application to them, they review the application, they make sure, and if they find that they're not following it, then I guess we'll go out and cite them based on the recommendation of the Environmental Commission. You know, if you want to do that, but it's just, we have one code enforcement officer, and we have a lot of other complaints that we're trying to deal with and stay on top, and to add this on, you know, to the city, it's difficult.
I
That's
think,
where we're pushing back.
I think that's great. We actually talked about that, the Environmental Commission, to put it on the Environmental Commission to try to take that off your plate. So especially as hopefully if that is something that you'd be amenable to.
And then I think too, have the Environmental Commission report to the City Council once a year on how many applications they have, and how they're doing, and are there any problems?
I mean, I think when we were in the committee, I mean, we were all in favor of that, if I'm remembering that correctly from the 4 different people in the room. But
That sounds like administrative cost to me. It's a permitting program now that you're, like an application period. Like I think it's
Well, no, it says it here.
No, look at page 139. It says if a property owner chooses to install a managed natural lawn area, it is determined by the code enforcement officer that the area fails to meet the definition, blah, blah, blah. Number 2, the city then provides written notice to the property owner advising them that it has to be brought into conformity, and then the city can perform the necessary work to abate the non-compliance and the cost assessed to the property owner. So I think that's what the city manager is talking about.
But I'm understanding it's like you want to do it, so you have to apply to this environmental commission first for approval about the plan.
What I hear you saying that you would maybe want to promote as an amendment would be to substitute for, in number 1, the code enforcement officer, the environmental commission, and then in number 2, the environmental commission may then provide written notice, and then the environmental commission may perform the necessary work to abate the non-compliance.
Yeah, my own, well, here was my amendment to what I'll share, which was one that would be, it shall be the burden of the responsible property manager to prove compliance with the ordinance, demonstrating a plan for planning and maintenance of the managed natural lawn area.
So you could add that as a number 1.
Yeah, that's number 1, and then number 2, and I did share this with staff up when we were having these conversations. 1, what's currently 1 would become number 2, and number 2 would become number 3.
And would you substitute the code enforcement officer and instead say the environmental commission?
Yeah, I mean, that's, if that's workable for staff, that's fine with me. I mean, I think someone would have to, it's gonna all start with a complaint, and ideally someone shows up and says, no, this is the plan, we're good, my neighbor misunderstood what was happening here, which I think is gonna be 99% of the cases. If, for example, there's an issue, if it's turf grass, the code enforcement officer can cite them under the existing turf, and if it's confusion about the natural match, so you're saying, so yeah, that would be my 1 amendment, so I can propose the amendment you're discussing here.
Well, I think if we're gonna amend it, let us work something up rather than try to do it on the fly.
I have a question here.
Yes.
This is murky, just from an outside person looking into this, just the discussion of how this is supposed to be adjudicated doesn't make sense to me right now. But what does make sense to me is your first amendment, which is the burden of proof of the homeowner to create a plan that complies with all state and local laws. If we put that as an amendment to the existing ordinance that we have, it solves all of this. And
it solves most of them.
And then we don't have to deal with any of this other stuff.
Who does the plan get submitted to?
In my understanding of how the code is currently written, you can have natural lawn areas, but there's no burden of proof as to what the homeowner is doing.
Right.
So if you put that piece into the current legislation as an amendment, it says it's the burden of the homeowner to have a plan that complies with natural area, state and local laws, then that satisfies at least in my opinion, the spirit of what we are trying to accomplish, which is making sure that a homeowner is doing this in the spirit of creating a natural area versus just having overgrown stuff.
Okay. Ben, so my understanding of Robert's rules is that when we took it off the table, this comes back as a first reading. So this is a first reading. So it seems to me the council has these options. One is if somebody wants to get rid of this, they can put it back on the table. If they want to, or they can vote against it, when it comes back at the next meeting. If you want to allow staff and promote that they should change this ordinance by taking David's language and maybe some other things that would reduce the staff time and expense, then I think you would vote against putting it on the table, or you would not move to put it on the table. Does that make sense? Okay. Is there any such motion? Okay, since there's no such motion, this is the first reading. We will allow staff the opportunity to make any adjustments that, based on our discussion, and we'll see it at our next meeting. At least some members of council may not vote for it, but that's not relevant to the point that council has determined that it should come back as a second reading at our next meeting. Okay, is there any further discussion on that one? Everybody understand where we are? Okay, fine. Then I will move to announcements and communications, and I will turn to City Manager Douglas Elliott.
I just have a couple things. We talked about tobacco sales, so I just want to clarify a few things, because I did get a copy of the City of Kent's ordinance, and so what I was trying to relate is the fact that the state issues licenses to sell cigarettes, but that doesn't prevent us, at least from what Kent has done, and I see, from regulating, issuing a permit to businesses focused on selling tobacco, which we can do unless the state preempts us. I don't think they will, but who knows in this state. And so, you know, we'll work with that. Jessica has had a conversation with our health department, because we're a part of Butler County Health, and we don't have our own health department like the City of Cincinnati, City of Columbus, and Kent. They have their own health department, so they're requiring us to adopt an ordinance probably similar to Kent, but the violations will probably have to be our violations that they'll be enforcing for us. We'll have to work out the details of this.
I know that this is supported by the Coalition for a Healthy Community.
Yeah, and I know JJ earlier commented on they do some compliance checks, but in the City of Kent's ordinance, they charge a $400 a year fee. And of course, if we have, 25 present cigarette licensed businesses, 25 times 400 is 10,000. You know, so that would provide some money that we could, you know, either use for enforcement with our police or with the Butler County Health Department. But so we'll work on that. You know, but as far as their ordinance goes, it doesn't restrict the number of.
Right.
That would have to be some sort of zoning or I forget the word.
Moratorium.
Yeah, you know, by the city. So what they do though is they define, you know, the age that you have to be. You have to be at least 21 to have one of these businesses. You can't have a felony. So
If you would like to, at the next meeting, you could also introduce a resolution on a moratorium until we get all this
we'll work on
figured out.
that. I'm going to be gone for a while, so you know, we'll have to talk to staff. We got a lot going on, folks. Anyway, let me just one last comment. You know, one of the costs of owning a home or renting is utility costs. And of course, as we all know, we have an electric aggregation program with a very competitive rate. And then also, I did share with City Council that we also have very competitive water and sewer rates. And the Environmental Protection Agency does a survey each year. And I provided information to City Council that showed that they're about 2 years behind in their survey, but the 2019 average annual residential sewer rate in Ohio was $749, which was a 4.5% increase over 2018. And our sewer rate for that same amount of consumption was $544, which is $205 less than the statewide average. When we look at water rates in 2019, the average annual residential water rate in Ohio was $697, which was a 4.2% increase over that average in 2018. Once again, our rate for that same amount of consumption is $421, which is $481 less than the statewide average.
Southwest Regional Water District, their rate is $622 for that same amount of consumption. And so our water rate is $201 less than theirs. We've not raised our volume charge for water and sewer rates since 2018. And as I pointed out, we're proposing in this fee ordinance to increase our water volume charge from $2.50 to $2.55 per 100 cubic foot. And that's a 2% increase. And then the sewer volume charge will go from $4 to $4.08 per 100 cubic foot. Once again, another 2% increase. So we'll still be very, very competitive. You know, our service department does a good job in managing our costs and keeping our rates competitive. City of Oakwood also does a more current survey of area jurisdictions, water and sewer rates. In April of 2021, the City of Oakwood released these survey results, and the City of Oxford had the lowest water rate and the second lowest sewer rate of any Butler County city. So I just wanted to share that with you because, as you know, we pay those costs monthly, and that's an important cost for any homeowner or renter.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Yep. Mike?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Chief? Okay. Joe?
Nothing, thank you.
Chief Deathridge? Hi, Casey. Welcome back.
Well, it's November, and while you'd like to think about Thanksgiving right away, let's not forget about Veterans Day, which is November 11th. I'll go ahead and give a plug for a few different activities happening that day, not just the city event. So Talawanda always does a breakfast that morning, 8 o'clock, and then an assembly at the high school at 9 o'clock. The city will have its annual event uptown at 11 o'clock. And then the next day, as you heard earlier tonight, Oxford Empty Bowls is doing their event. They're doing free meals for all military and active duty at the Oxford Empty Bowls event on Saturday the 12th. So don't forget about Veterans Day.
Thank you very much. Sam?
Nothing, thank you.
Jessica?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Heather?
Nothing, thank you.
Hi, Ben.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Glenn?
To the public, if you don't like the way things are being run in the country or in the state or in the town that you're in, next Tuesday is your time. If you want to riot, next Tuesday is your time. If you want to make your voice known, next Tuesday is your time. Go out and vote.
Thank you, Glenn.
And if you're not going to be in town on Tuesday, like I am, make a plan to vote early. That would be my only add-on to Councilor Ellerby. But then I also just wanted to give a couple shout-outs. The Oxford Parks and Rec trick-or-treat uptown was really cute. Top-notch event, was wonderful. I was able to go walk around. It was great. And then just a shout-out to Chief Jones and his staff. We've had a couple of wild weekends. It was family weekend and then Halloween weekend. And by and large, uptown survived. So thank you for all your hard work. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Today's the first day for Native American Heritage Month, and you might already be doing this at the next meeting, but I wonder if we could have a proclamation acknowledging that and probably acknowledging the stolen tribal lands that we're on.
Work with Heather. I'm sure we can get it done.
I was at the Shabbat for Love and Honor. I saw Mayor Snavely there. It was wonderful, and it's a wonderful community. And thank you also to OPD, who had a significant presence there, I think, to help people feel safer that night. Also, 2 living room conversations at the Interfaith Center tomorrow from 6 to 7:30 on abortion. We started one a couple weeks ago, and there were so many people there that we didn't have enough time. And then the night before the election, so that's Monday night of next week, the topic will be political stereotypes from 6 to 7:30 at the Interfaith Center. Thank you.
Nothing for me tonight that hasn't already been said.
Okay.
So I would just express gratitude. I mean, if you look at a long agenda packet, our agenda packet was long, and behind it was a whole budget that wasn't in the agenda packet. And so you guys make it look so easy, but obviously there's a lot of wrestling that goes behind the numbers, and even the conversations we have, kind of like, how can we accomplish our goals with limited means of staff or money, and there's no best answer to how to do that. But the fact that we're able to tackle so many things and be covering so many fronts is really impressive. And so it's not always easy and tough choices, but I'm grateful for the staff and management for shepherding us through all that. So thank you.
I just want to give a shout out to Jessica Green. I think we are so lucky to have Jessica working for the city of Oxford. And I had the opportunity to be up close to see her in action at a Butler County meeting recently, and it was very clear to me that the most competent person in the room, according to everybody sitting at the table, was Jessica Green. And so thank you, Jessica. We really appreciate you. The second thing is to remind the public that the Oxford Tomorrow Public Open House, this is our comprehensive plan, and this is the last public meeting where you can come and see before it goes to planning, which are more public meetings, and to council. But this will be held Wednesday, November 16th. And it's held from 6 to 8 p.m. It's good if you're there at the beginning because they're going to have a presentation of what's going on, and then there's time for you to go around and see and interact with each part of the comprehensive plan proposal. It's now in its final draft form, pending the comments that are made. This will be held at the Talawanda Middle School on Oxford Riley Road, 6 to 8 p.m. So if you're at all able to be there, I encourage you to do so. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.